Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are diving into a genuinely chilling, dark fable, The Iron Crown of Desolation. We're going to frame this whole analysis as a dramatic, graphic novel-style journey straight into the psychology of a classic villainous archetype. So buckle up because this is going to be one intensely dark ride. What happens when survival demands we shed our humanity entirely? It's a pretty haunting premise, right? And this question perfectly sets the chiaroscuro tone for our mythic fable. We're following a character known simply as the Wanderer, who is standing right at the precipice of an infinite abyss. But before we follow him down into that dark, we really need to understand the philosophical engine driving his descent. Okay, let's start by defining the Wanderer's core philosophy: absolute self-containment. Basically, he utterly rejects all external reliance. He chooses to exist as a, quote, flame that burns without fuel. Instead of drawing energy from the world around him, he draws heat strictly from his own consuming rage. It is isolation by grand design. Now, to understand how he achieves this state, we have to look at his environment. The temple's darkness isn't just some empty void. To him, it's a jagged monument to the silence he's long worshipped. The physical setting perfectly mirrors his internal state. He literally feels the resonance of this dark space through an armor made entirely of his own scar tissue. The physical space and his psychological armor, they're exactly the same. Both are jagged, silent, and completely hardened. And this sets up a brilliant archetypal contrast. On one side, we have the abyss. It's a cold, unyielding reality that rewards only the hardened. And on the other side, the sun. Now, for most of humanity, the sun represents life, warmth, and hope. But for the Wanderer, oh no. To him, it offers nothing but dangerous illusions of warmth that actually rots the iron. To a survivor like him, traditional human warmth is literally corrosive. The trap of empathy. So, if warmth and light are so corrosive, how exactly does he view the people who actually live in the light? Well, to him, their entire way of life is just a trap. He looks back at the normal world and sees only a flickering lie. And this directly sets up his brutal deconstruction of human connection. What's really fascinating here is the specific philology he uses to describe this trap. He takes architectural and agrarian terms and uses them to completely demean empathy as the language of the weak. For instance, he calls normal people cattle huddling before a storm, and he claims their communities are just fortresses out of dust. But here is the most brutal part. He describes human connection as handing each other the shears to cut their throats. Basically, he sees trust merely as handing someone the exact tool they need to destroy you. Forging the Iron Crown. Now, nobody is just born a monument to silence. So let's shift gears and explore the psychological mechanics of how he actually forged this incredibly dark worldview, a process that culminates in this titular crown. Let's map out his psychological descent here. It all begins with abandonment. But here's the twist. He reframes this original tragedy not as a wound that needs healing, but as a selection process specifically intended to forge him into a weapon. Then he enters the abyss, which acts as his necessary crucible for greatness. That leads right into the unmasking phase, where empathy is entirely stripped away. And finally, he reaches his ultimate form, the Missionary of Desolation. And this perfectly illustrates how the symbol of the Iron Crown evolves. Originally, it might have represented the sheer trauma inflicted upon him. But going through this crucible, it transforms into a badge of grim pride. It becomes this ultimate dividing line, separating him, the hardened survivor, from the soft, who still desperately chase temporary delusions like mercy and kindness. To maintain this crown, he essentially systematizes his darkness by walking us through what he calls his law of subtraction. First, empathy is entirely stripped away as dark energy swirls around him. Second, he realizes that the universe relentlessly removes the vulnerable. And third comes the grim conclusion: only the jagged remains endure. So, he views the universe not as a place of creation or growth, but as a relentless mechanical filter that's designed solely to subtract weakness. Which brings us to this pivotal quote. He describes his transformation as the, quote, necessary descent into evil required to finally conquer oneself. For a classic nihilistic literary villain, falling into evil isn't a failure or a sin at all. It's actually a tool for the ultimate conquest of human frailty. He is actively trying to shed the very last vestiges of his own humanity. The Missionary of Desolation. Having completely conquered his own frailty, he undergoes his final transformation, stepping out of the shadows as something entirely new. See, a survivor merely endures the cruelty of the storm. They just weather the world. But a missionary of desolation, that is an active, terrifying objective. He intends to project his hardened, desolated heart outward. His goal is to turn the rest of the world into an unyielding, desolate mirror of himself. He doesn't just want to survive this storm anymore, you guys. He wants to be the storm. The unyielding shape of the stone. And why does he want to do this? Well, the abyss has granted him his ultimate truth. He believes that when all the flickering lies and temporary delusions like mercy finally die away, only one thing remains: the unyielding shape of the stone. Think about it. Stone doesn't feel. Stone doesn't need fuel. Stone simply is. The diatribe of the final stone. Now we're entering the climax of our explainer. Standing before the absolute deepest pit of the temple, with a voice echoing like grinding stones, the wanderer delivers his grand theological manifesto. Speaking out to the ghosts of his own memory, he sneers, "You who cling to the light are merely mortgaging your peace to the grave." Pay attention to the specific transactional language here. Mortgaging your peace. To him, clinging to hope and light isn't a beautiful human trait. It is a terrible investment, a transactional failure that inevitably ends in death. He goes on to completely deconstruct traditional altruism. He remembers travelers who offered him a helping hand, but he just brushes that off as a dangerous illusion of trust. To the wanderer, the reality of a helping hand is always a blade hidden behind a smile. He mocks their warmth, calling human communities a mere collection of crutches. Any reliance on another person, in his eyes, is a deadly threat. Then he delivers this incredibly visceral quote. "The world is a hammer, and you are all but soft clay waiting to be crushed." Wow, you can just feel the graphic novel intensity dripping off those words, right? It perfectly reinforces the grim fable's core visual metaphor. The universe is blunt, it's mechanical, and it is completely unfeeling. If you remain soft clay, your destruction is absolutely guaranteed. So, the crucial point for us to take away is that all of this dark rhetoric boils down to a single, brutal core axiom. He says he stepped into the abyss to find the only truth that does not rot, which is this: vulnerability is a precursor to death. This single axiom forms the absolute bedrock of his dark archetype. If vulnerability equals death, then invulnerability, no matter the terrible moral cost, equals life. This leads directly to his final, unmasked reality. He declares he does not seek warmth. Instead, he embodies three chilling metaphors. He is the frost that does not apologize. He is the weapon that feels nothing when it strikes. And finally, culminating in absolute self-containment, he is the iron fortress that has finally become its own king, an impenetrable structure requiring absolutely nothing from the outside world. The Wanderer claims absolute victory over human frailty here. But I'll leave you with this provocative thought. If true strength actually requires the death of all empathy and existing as a flame that burns without fuel, is his iron fortress truly a kingdom, or is it just a beautifully articulated tomb? It's a question that challenges the very foundation of his manifesto, and one I hope you literature students debate for a long time. Thanks for exploring the abyss with me today.